I spent 3 years in silence until a millionaire stepped in and changed our lives forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with tension as I sat in the darkened room, my heart pounding like a drum. My hands trembled, damp with fear and uncertainty. Inside, I felt a storm brewing, a chaos of memories locked away, screams muffled by the weight of silence. Why life spiraled into a silence so profound it swallowed me whole. 3 years trapped in a world where words were stolen from my lips, replaced by thick, suffocating walls. I was just 17 when it happened, when everything I held dear began to crumble. My parents were gone, torn away by a heart-wrenching tragedy. The laughter of friends faded to whispers, and those I loved turned away, unsure of how to comfort a lost soul. I wandered through the empty halls of my house like a ghost, haunted by echoes of my past. The days blurred into one another, sunlight filtered through grimy windows, illuminating dust particles that danced in the stillness. I often found solace at the old park down the street, where swings creaked and laughter of children rang out like a cruel reminder of what I couldn't have. But I was a mere shadow, a bystander with no voice to join the symphony of life surrounding me. Then, everything changed one fateful afternoon. A sleek black car rolled up, shiny and out of place amidst the rusty playground equipment and peeling paint. I watched as a man stepped out, and he seemed to shimmer with wealth. He was strikingly handsome, dressed in tailored clothes that whispered of luxury. My heart raced, curiosity pulled at me like gravity. Who was he? What was he doing here? As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows, the man walked towards me. He smiled, a genuine warmth in his gaze that made the air feel electric. "Hey there," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "What's your name?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I opened my mouth but no sound came forth. The silence was a familiar shroud, smothering the sparks of hope that flickered inside. He looked at me, confusion flickering across his face. I wanted to scream, to release the years of anguish, but I just stood there, frozen. That he knelt down to my level, peering into my eyes as if he could see the pain swirling within. "I can help you," he said softly. There was something almost mystical about his presence. I felt the weight of his words, heavy and potent, etched into my very being. But what could a millionaire do for a girl so lost in her own silence? My mind screamed no, but my heart whispered yes. Suddenly, the calm of the evening shattered with a loud crash from the direction of the swings. A group of teenagers appeared, laughing raucously, breaking the fragile spell he had woven. I flinched, retreating into my shell as they approached, their voices like knives slicing through my already frayed nerves. The newcomer stood, radiating confidence, and waved a hand to quiet them. My breath hitched, my anxiety bubbling to the surface as their laughter fell silent. "What are you doing here?" One of them jeered, eyes narrowed. Their gazes turned to me, then to him, suspicion blending with confusion. Fear tightened around my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. Had I made a mistake? Could he really be the change I needed? His response came quick, unmistakable. "She's with me." The certainty in his voice both soothed me and sent chills down my spine. Who was he? Why was he here? I dared a glance at his face, and for the first time in years, a flicker of hope surfaced. But doubt crept in. What if this was another dead end? With every pulse in my neck, with every growing heartbeat, I felt the layers of silence crack, even just a bit. I knew he had stepped into my world, a million-dollar mystery waiting to unravel. The warmth of connection brushed against my skin, giving life to dormant dreams. But would it be enough? Could this man break the chains of silence that held me captive? And as the shadows stretched across the park, wrapping us in uncertainty, I couldn't help but wonder what was in store for me if I took that leap. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sunlight broke through the dense clouds the following day, painting the world in brilliant hues of gold and blue. I stood at the park's edge, uncertainty pooling in my stomach. The man David, as I later learned, was already waiting, leaning casually against a tree. His confident posture was both welcoming and disarming, sending shivers down my spine. It was strange how someone I barely knew felt like a beacon in my shadowed life. "Good morning," he called out, his smile infectious. There was something disarmingly genuine about him. It made me question why a man like him would bother with someone like me. I took a hesitant step forward, the fragments of yesterday's turmoil still lodged in my throat. The silence wrapped around me like a heavy cloak, and my heart sank when I remembered that I couldn't speak. I gestured awkwardly toward the swings, as if words might spring to life in my absence. David took a few steps closer, his blue eyes reflecting an understanding that felt rare in this world. "You don't have to say anything," he reassured me, his voice low and warm. "I get it. Just being here is enough." Somehow, those words, simple and unadorned, provided me with a sense of belonging that had been absent for so long that we spent the morning sitting side by side on a weathered bench, lost in our own thoughts as children played nearby. Occasionally, David would steal glances at me, and each time our eyes met, a surge of warmth ignited within me. I didn't need to speak to communicate. The way he watched me, the kindness in his gaze, told me that I was seen. And yet, the shadow of grief still clung tightly to my heart. That in moments of silence, memories flooded back with a vengeance. My mother's laughter echoing through the halls, my father's reassuring embrace, and the solace they had always given. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the ocean of feelings crashing over me. Tears threatened to spill as the ache of their absence and regret pushed against the walls of my heart. "Hey," David said softly, breaking through my sorrow. "Are you okay?" The concern in his voice wrapped around me, urging me to confide in him, to share the burdens I carried. But how could I? The silence felt so protective, so safe. I shook my head, and though I could not voice my pain, I conveyed it through the trembling of my hands as they gripped the arms of the bench. David, in his infinite patience, shifted closer, silently urging me to open up, as if he knew the layers of healing I needed to peel back. It was an act of kindness I hadn't experienced in years, and I found it both terrifying and exhilarating. Suddenly, the mood shifted when we noticed a little girl on the other side of the playground. She wore a bright red dress and had fallen to the ground, her face scrunching up in a familiar distress. The world seemed to hold its breath as I watched her silent tears fall like the rain I longed to hide under. Without thinking, I stood and wandered toward her, surprise sparking in my chest. "Would you like a hug?" I whispered, the words almost falling from my lips like a long-forgotten melody. The girl looked up, startled, and through her tears, she nodded hesitantly. I crouched down, wrapping her in my arms, and it felt like the silence broke just a little. To my astonishment, she hugged me tight, and it dawned on me hope was possible. Not only was my heart swelling, but a connection formed between us that further eased the tightening grip of loneliness I had carried for so long. Moments like these, however fleeting, reminded me that I was still capable of reaching out, still powerful beyond the silence. David watched with a proud smile, a hint of inspiration glinting in his eyes. As the little girl pulled away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm halo around us. "Thank you," she whispered, her innocence penetrating my heart with an accidental reminder of how many connections remained to be forged. But just as the warmth enveloped me, an echoing voice shattered this moment. "There you are, Mia." It was my older brother, Eli. My heart dropped, a vice tightening around it as I met his gaze. He was supposed to be at work, and the confusion in his eyes quickly morphed into concern. "Why didn't you tell anyone you were coming here?" Eli rushed over, and the little girl stepped back, recognizing the shift in the air. David remained silent but vigilant, watching the scene unfold with curiosity. "Mia, you can't keep running away. We need to talk about this," Eli pressed, his voice edging on desperation. My stomach twisted in knots. The words were jarring, slicing through the tentative atmosphere like glass shards. I felt the storm inside of me churn, battling the sweet thread of hope I had just begun to weave, and just like that, in front of David and this innocent child, I was swept back into the chaos of my life, forced to confront the shadows I had tried to flee. Now I stood at the crossroads of silence and vulnerability, an overwhelming question looming: would I cling to the past, or could I muster the strength to speak again? With Ella's concerned face etched in my mind, the world around me dimmed, and the echo of my heart thrummed in my ears. I had a choice to make, one that would either haunt my dreams or propel me into the light. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows as the heaviness of Ella's presence filled the space around us. I felt caught between two worlds: the comforting bubble of connection I had begun to share with David and the reality of familial expectations that had haunted me day after day. "Mia, we really need to talk," Eli insisted, his voice shaking slightly, betraying his well-intentioned anger. "You can't keep shutting us out like this. We worry about you." The little girl dropped her hand and backed away cautiously, glancing at David as if seeking support in this moment of upheaval. David stood in stillness, watching, his blue eyes offering immediate understanding without judgment. But as Ella's words sank deeper, the warmth of his gaze became an ember against the icy grip of dread clutching my heart that I wanted to protest, to defend my retreat into the silence that had become my sanctuary. Instead, I simply stared at Eli, my mouth a sealed vault of unspoken words. The tumult within me churned, regret tangled with a desire to protect the tiny spark of connection I had ignited just moments ago. I took a step back, instinctively retreating from the storm brewing at my back. "Mia," Ella's voice softened, the concern turning earnest. "Please, just say something." Anything. That I felt like a statue, my skin hardening against his plea. The weight of grief stumbled over my heart, burying what little strength I had left. I wanted to scream, to unleash all the suffocating thoughts that had been pounding within me, but those words hung like leaden anchors, held down by the tidal waves of grief. I don't know how to talk," I finally managed to convey, my trembling fingers gesturing toward my throat, my heart racing at the admission. The truth felt so foreign on my tongue, yet it was the most genuine thing I could offer amid the tempest. David shifted closer, his eyes still filled with empathy, and at that moment, I felt his unwavering faith blanket me. "Mia," he urged gently, "you don't have to share everything all at once. Just take your time. You're strong for being here today." The little girl stood awkwardly by, clutching her red dress, as if caught in the crossfire of emotions. She dashed forward, reaching for my hand, and I could hardly comprehend how such simple kindness could pierce through the tension. Our fingers linked, and I looked down at her innocent smile, a flicker of warmth rekindling the cold spaces within. "Mia, please," Eli begged again, his voice rising. "You can't keep avoiding this. We want to help you heal." With every insistence, the air around me crackled as memories surfaced, unbidden and relentless. They danced on the edges of my mind like specters, reminding me of the family ID lost, the love ID buried, and the very real pain of confronting it. I felt suffocated, teetering on the edge of a cliff between repressed grief and a desperate yearning for connection. Suddenly, the little girl tugged on my hand, her eyes shimmering with an understanding that echoed deeper than her years. "You can be brave, just like this," she said softly, her voice a tender whisper that broke through the turmoil. That single statement struck a chord, forcing me to meet her gaze. Could I really be brave? Could I summon even a fraction of the strength I saw in the faces of those I had loved and lost? I thought of my mother, the way she navigated life with resilience, even in her silence. Maybe it was time I followed her lead. I opened my mouth, the words catching and rising like a phoenix from the ashes of grief. "I miss them," came the hushed murmur, barely above a whisper but potent with emotion. The world around me blinked into focus. Ella's expression shifted from urgency to something softer, the lines of worry in his forehead easing. As roles reversed, I found myself leaning into the quiet comfort of the little girl's warmth, her tiny hand a lifeline that bound me to this moment. "When you talk," she encouraged, "you can make them proud." Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I felt the fractures of my heart untangle, however minutely. And in that delicate rawness lay the promise of vulnerability, a chance to redefine the connection I had with my brother and to reclaim my own voice, but just as I took a deep breath, ready to continue, a hard, unfamiliar voice shattered my fragile attempt at honesty. What a touching scene! The voice rang out with a mocking edge, pulling my attention toward the park entrance. An unfamiliar man stood there, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips, a stark contrast to the warmth surrounding us. "David, I think we need to talk," the stranger said, his eyes locking onto my new companion, his expression unreadable yet sinister. My heart plummeted as my body instinctively recoiled at the tension suddenly charged in the air. Ellis' earlier urgency returned, but this time it was laced with protective instinct as he stepped in front of me. "Who are you?" Eli demanded, his tone warning that I stared into the stranger's calculating gaze, and something deep inside me twisted in apprehension. I was about to uncover the glaring truth about this unexpected new chapter in our lives, one that would add yet another layer of turmoil to an already complicated situation, just someone with a vested interest in MIA's future, he replied, the smirk widening into a disconcerting grin. "And it seems it's time we had a serious discussion." My breath hitched, and the world around me flickered ominously, weighed down by an impending sense of doom. The shadows of uncertainty crawled back, and I realized my silence would not be the only thing I'd have to confront. A whirlwind of questions filled my mind, and as the man took a step forward, I understood everything was about to change again. The man stood there, exuding an air of authority that sent luminescent ripples through the fragile bubble of connection I had begun to forge. My heart fluttered violently within my chest, a grim prediction echoing in the back of my mind. As Ella's protective silhouette hovered before me, I felt like a child again trapped, searching for safety from an approaching storm. "Who sent you?" Eli pressed, but the man merely chuckled, his amusement mingling with disdain. "Let's not jump to conclusions. I'm here to help, after all," he said, his voice oozing with insincerity. He tilted his head in my direction. "Mia, darling, isn't it time you faced your past? Ignoring it won't make it disappear." Warmth drained from my cheeks as he spoke my name, manipulating it so easily, as if it were a plaything in his hands. I wanted to retreat from his gaze, from the way he dissected my being with that all-too-knowing smirk. But I stood still, tethered by the fragile threads of hope I'd woven just moments before. "Leave her alone," David growled, stepping forward, unyielding. His bravery ignited a small spark of courage within me, intensifying the battle raging inside my heart. My gaze flicked to the little girl, who seemed unfazed by the looming figure. Perhaps she was too young to grasp the danger of the moment, or perhaps she sensed that courage flowed deeper than mere words. The stranger feigned innocence, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Fine, let's keep this civil then. I come bearing news too vital to ignore." "What kind of news?" Ella's voice remained firm, but I could hear the tremor beneath it, an undertow of anxiety and protectiveness that only someone who cared could express. "Your family's well-being is at stake," the man replied, less a proposition and more a declaration. "And Mia, well, she has some inheritance that could change everything. Or nothing, depending on how she chooses to approach it." My breath caught in my throat, threads weaving together strands of confusion and dread. "What do you mean?" My voice wavered, laced with an urgency to understand this revelation, yet I dreaded its implications. "It's simple, really. I can facilitate the release of funds that have been tied up for years on one condition." His eyes glinted like shards of ice, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the approaching dusk. Ella's stance grew more robust. "You think you can play games with us? Money won't bring MIA's past back." The rage intertwined with desperation hung in the air, tangible and gnawing at my soul. But isn't that the core of what Mia has to confront? The past will always linger, but I can provide a bridge to her future. If she chooses to acknowledge her losses, she'll have access to her rightful destiny. He leaned in closer, his intentions unspoken, yet hauntingly clear. "The choice is hers." Each word struck like a hammer on an anvil, igniting new fires of conflict where hope had just begun to bloom. Memories of my mother's last days flicked in my mind, intertwined with whispers of possibilities, adventures we'd talked about but would never share. My thoughts spiraled, teetering on the precipice of darkness and longing. The little girl, silent up until now, tugged at my hand once again. "Mia, you can be brave. You can choose what's best, brave. The word echoed in my thoughts, but the prospect of facing the truth, the unspeakable grief and the perhaps insurmountable choices surrounding it threatened to strangle that bravado before it had a chance to unfurl. I looked at her, the embodiment of innocence and unwavering belief, so contrasting to the haunting reality before me. Enough. Eli exploded, gripping my arm, forging a shield against the stranger's words. You can't coerce her like this. Money doesn't fix wounds. Of course not, the man replied, unfazed by Ella's anger, his lips curling into a grin that felt sharp and predatory. But it can provide an opportunity, a second chance. Isn't that worth consideration? With that, I felt a wave of nausea. Was my past merely a bargaining chip in this dangerous game? I backed away, longing for the comfort of the little girl's hand, but torn by the decisions converging upon me like shadows in the fading light. Come back when you're ready, Mia. But remember, every moment you wait leaves the door to your past wide open. With a nod to Eli, he turned, each deliberate step taken with the calm certainty of someone accustomed to winning. Just as quickly as he had entered, he vanished into the world that felt suddenly too big and too daunting for me to navigate. That I felt frail and vulnerable, stripped of the connections I had just begun to form. Eli turned, his face a canvas of concern, and I could see the invisible threads of anger still holding him. David lingered, careful to let the silence envelop us. The little girl squeezed my hand tighter still, grounding me with her presence. That I don't know what to do, I whispered, the weight of uncertainty crashing around me like dark waves threatening to draw me under. Then we figure it out together, Eli said, defiance tinged with tenderness. You don't have to face this alone. In that moment, I believed him, but I felt the insidious creep of fear rise in the pit of my stomach. The choices ahead loomed like a cliff, swinging me between the weight of my past and the hope of what lay ahead. What kind of future awaited me, tangled with secrets and loss? As we stood in the fading light, the tendrils of twilight wrapping around us, I realized the struggle ahead would change everything even if I wasn't sure I was ready to embrace it. And deep down, a flicker of resolve ignited a push to reclaim my voice, however fraught with consequences it would be. But just as I found a glimmer of determination, a sharp instinct told me I was not yet finished. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the screen illuminated with a message that sent ice coursing through my veins. It was from an unknown number, a simple sentence that held the weight of my life. You're in danger, Mia. They won't stop until they get what they want. Hope spiraled into despair, and the cliff I stood on began to crumble beneath my feet. The message echoed in my mind, unbearable in its simplicity. I could barely breathe, my grip on the little girl's hand growing slack as confusion tangled into unmanageable terror. Eli watched me, his brow furrowing deeper, as if he could sense the upheaval brewing beneath my surface. Who is it? He asked, his voice laced with concern as he peered over my shoulder. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I couldn't let anyone else in. Not now, not like this. Not until I understood the threat that eclipsed hope in my veins. It's nothing, I stammered, shoving my phone back into my pocket. But something deep within me churned in protest. This wasn't mere curiosity or a harmless old ghost from my past. This was a warning cloaked in shadows, and I was far too vulnerable to turn my back on it. Mia, David said, his voice quiet but insistent, don't push us away. If something's wrong, let us help. Eli nodded, his eyes never leaving me. We're here. Whatever it is, whatever this is about, you don't have to face it alone. You've got us. The little girl's innocent gaze pierced through my turmoil. All I wanted was to shelter her from the storm brewing around us, yet here I stood in the precipice of revelation and denial. How could I find strength amidst all this chaos when I felt like I was spiraling into an abyss? I started, but words slipped away like grains of sand through my fingers. Eli stepped closer, the warmth of his presence cutting through the cold uncertainty that clutched at me. Just tell us who you're afraid of. We can figure this out if we know what we're up against. That I searched his face, hoping for a flicker of assurance that could quell the rising tide of dread. And for a fleeting second, I almost let myself believe that everything would somehow work out, that I could summon the courage to unravel the threads of my past while safeguarding the present. But then the memories crashed into me like waves, and my heart ached with unshed tears. The past was not simply an echo, it was a storm that had uprooted the very ground I stood on. The threats weren't just whispers, they were living, breathing entities circling like vultures, waiting for an opening to pounce. That I whispered, the finality of my confession hanging in the dusty air. I can't drag you into this. It's too dangerous. Ella's expression hardened. We're already in it, Mia. You can't protect us by shutting us out. His voice softened, but the intensity in his eyes remained. You have to let us help. Please, David chimed in, his voice a low rumble of support. We all have our scars, Mia. But facing them together, that's where real strength lies. That I swallowed hard, the weight of their encouragement mingling with the trepidation that twisted my insides. I could feel the past scratching at the back of my mind, urging me to relive moments I had fought so hard to forget. The shadows whispered truths I wasn't ready to hear, yet somehow felt obligated to confront. Just as I opened my mouth to share the terror churning inside, my phone buzzed insistently again. I glanced down, dread pooling in my stomach. A second message awaited me. This one was distinctly different, filled with a sinister clarity that sent a jolt through my veins. Don't let anyone close. The less they know, the safer they'll be, it read. The room swelled with silence, but my heart echoed loudly within that void. My breath quickened, the implications of the text firing rapidly through my thoughts. They didn't want me to share my fears or my truth. You had to keep secrets to survive. But could I actually do that? Could my attempt at protection be little more than shackles around those who dared to care? A sudden sense of urgency pulsed through me, and fear morphed into resolve. I need to know more, I said, sounding braver than I felt. I can't keep running. I need to understand what this means, who they are. Ella's eyes widened, hope igniting within the shadows. Then let's find out together. But we take every step carefully. David nodded in agreement, determination lighting his face. Well, figure this out. You're not alone in this anymore. As I grappled with my gnawing fears, I felt the stirrings of hope, faint but alive. If we navigated the labyrinth of my past, perhaps we could unearth the truth buried beneath layers of pain and uncertainty. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be safe, but it might be the only way forward. Just when I thought we had steeled ourselves for whatever lay ahead, my phone buzzed once more, seizing our attention. I hesitated before looking, knowing any revelation could tip the delicate balance we had just achieved. Meet me at the old warehouse tomorrow night, the message instructed, signed with a single, ominous initial, A. The cliff before me crumbled further, plunging me into an abyss where fear and trepidation fused with an undeniable urgency. I was caught in a swirling escalation that threatened to consume everything I tried to hold dear. But now, with Eli and David by my side, I felt the pull of possibility, though it came wrapped in danger and uncertainty, and as the sky darkened around us, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was gathering, not just in my past but in the present moment itself. The old warehouse loomed in my thoughts, dark and foreboding, like a ghost of my past reaching out with insistence. The anticipation twisted in my stomach, gnawing away at the hope I had barely clung to since Eli and David had stepped into my life. I had barely scraped by myself for so long. The idea of facing this with them filled me with warmth but also an ache of fear I couldn't shake. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror my doubts. I paced the small apartment we shared, trying to make sense of the looming confrontation. What if it's a trap? I murmured, anxiety knotting my words. Eli leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, his presence a reassuring anchor amidst my tempest. Well, be careful. Well, think it through, he said, confidence pouring from him. But you shouldn't face this alone. You can't fight shadows by yourself anymore. David was at my side, offering a steady gaze. If anything feels off, we leave. You don't have to fear anything with us, he promised, his words like a gentle salve against my anxiety. But promises, however well-meaning, didn't quell the gnawing dread that gnawed at my edges. The thought of revealing the depth of my past chilled me to the bone. Every breath I took felt heavy, burdened with the weight of memories I had locked away, memories of being trapped in suffocating silence, of suffering in isolation. I remembered the hollow echoes of my past, moments that were too painful to recount, swirling like shadows around me. Whispers of betrayal and betrayal gnawed at my thoughts. It was maddening to think that a single message had the power to uproot me once again. I clenched my fists, willing myself to be stronger than my fears. Are you ready? Ella's voice broke through my musing, tension lacing through the question. While I wanted to exude courage, my heart thudded insistently, reminding me that the darkness was very real. Not really, I confessed, my breath catching as uncertainty held me like a vice. What if I can't do this? What if they know everything? I felt raw, vulnerable, terrified that exposing my truth would lead to threats I could never outrun. That he stepped forward, his intensity compelling my gaze to meet his. Whatever comes, we handle it together. That's the deal. We're not going to let your past consume you. His voice, steady and reassuring, was like a lighthouse against the storm. David nodded, his steady assurance wrapping around me like an embrace. You can lean on us, Mia, no matter what you discover. Moments ticked away relentlessly, and as dusk painted the walls of our sanctuary in shadows, I felt the fragile threads of hope stretching thin. Time often had a way of amplifying fear, and my resolve shrank each time I imagined facing this ghost. I needed something, a sign perhaps that proved I wasn't alone, that moving forward was worth the risk. That it was then that a soft knock on the door reverberated through our shared space, cutting through the tension that had coiled around us. I exchanged glances with Eli and David, surprise and curiosity flashing in their eyes. My heart raced as Eli padded to the door and pulled it open. The familiar face of Mrs. Johnson, our beloved neighbor whose laughter rang like music through the hallways, greeted us. I brought cookies, she declared brightly, her arms laden with a plate of perfectly baked treats that had begun to cool. I thought you might need a little pick-me-up. There was something about her sweetness that melted the fortress of fear I had built. It struck me as profound that amidst the swirling storm, someone appeared with light, a gentle kindness that seemed so out of place in the chaos. My heart softened as I took in her vivacious spirit, the way she lit up the space with her generosity. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, I said, fighting to suppress the swell of emotions threatening to surface. You've no idea how much this means. As she set the cookies down on our kitchen table, her eyes twinkled with wisdom that transcended her years. You kids remember, no storm lasts forever. You have each other, and sometimes a little sweetness can chase those shadows away. Her smile lingered, leaving traces of comfort in its wake as she walked away, humming a tune I hadn't heard in years. That I couldn't help but chuckle in disbelief, the warmth of her spirit permeating my own. It was a small thing, but sometimes, small moments of kindness could disrupt the most formidable fears. Maybe I didn't need to shove everything aside, perhaps there was a path through the darkness, touched with fleeting light and sweetness. Eli returned to my side, his eyes searching mine with cautious hope. Are you all right? You looked different just now. I took a deep breath, allowing the warmth from Mrs. Johnson's visit to fill me, chasing away the shadows for just a moment. I think I can do this. I want to try, at least. But my words caught in my throat as the weight of what lay ahead pressed down. It felt colossal, looming in the corners of my imagination. But within that fear, a new clarity had woven itself. If I was to face my past, perhaps it wasn't solely a fight, but also a journey of finding strength at the core of who I was becoming. Eli squeezed my hand, grounding me as he whispered, "We're not going anywhere, Mia. Whatever this has unleashed, we will meet it together." His promise wrapped around me like a lifeline, igniting the flicker of hope once more. But just as I began to feel the strength rising within, my phone buzzed again, an unwelcome reminder that this brief respite could slip through my fingers at any moment. With dread shadowing every beat of my heart, I glimpsed the screen and felt my breath hitch. "Tomorrow will show you the truth. Don't be late," it read, signed again with the ominous initial, A. As the magnitude of the message settled in, icy fingers of fear traced down my spine once more. I had stepped toward courage, but an unknown tempest awaited just beyond the door. The sense of impending confrontation loomed over me like a thundercloud, tightening the knot of uncertainty in my gut. Tomorrow would not be merely a day, it would be a reckoning, and I had no idea what awaited me in the darkness that would arrive with tomorrow's dawn. The room felt heavy, the kind of weight that pressed against my chest like an unwanted secret. As the echoes of Mrs. Johnson's kindness faded, the cold reality of as message sank deeper into my bones. I had braced myself for the confrontation, yet now, dread warred with an unexpected desire for resolution, a resolution I wasn't sure I was ready for. Eli and David flanked me, and it was as if the warmth of their bodies could chase away the encroaching chill. "Do you want to talk about it?" David offered gently, as if sensing that the storm inside me needed a voice. I wanted to scream, to unravel the confusion that swirled within. What if everything I've kept hidden comes tumbling out? What if I'm not strong enough to handle it? I whispered, my voice quivering with vulnerability. Eli stepped closer, his hand resting on my shoulder, reassuring and steadfast. "We know you've been through a lot, Mia. But tomorrow doesn't erase who you are, only reveals parts of your journey that you've faced. We'll navigate this together." I nodded, taking solace in their unwavering support. The bond we shared became a fragile thread of hope as I faced the chaos that waited just beyond the shadows. Time slipped away, each tick of the clock echoing my racing heartbeat, but I found new strength in small rituals. David suggested we bake something to share, a simple distraction that unwound the tightness in my chest. As we mixed batter and laughed at our missteps, the warmth of their presence began to chase away the fear, tiny flickers of connection that anchored me in the present. Exhausted from the emotional whirlwind, I fell onto the sofa later that evening, the intoxicating aroma of vanilla and chocolate wrapping around me like a blanket. Eli fell into the cushion beside me, casting a sideways glance filled with heartfelt concern. "Are you okay, though? I mean really okay?" Letting out a deep breath, I shut my eyes for a moment. There was peace here, but the specter of prowled at the edges of my consciousness, reminding me that this sanctuary could crumble. "I'm trying," I finally admitted, opening my eyes to meet his unusually intense gaze. "You're one of the strongest people I know," he replied, his voice low and steady, just as a sense of calm began to settle a fragile comfort that might catapult me into a new dawn. A sharp knock on the door shattered the moment. My heart raced. Each echoing thud propelled the anxiety coursing through my veins, a stark counterpoint to the warmth I had been wrapping myself in. Who could that be at this hour? David wondered aloud, his brow furrowing slightly. "That I don't know. But it can't be good," I replied, feeling a sense of foreboding pulse beneath my skin. As Eli moved to answer the door, I swiveled on the couch, my heart thumping in sync with the step of his feet against the hardwood floor. When he opened the door, my breath caught. There stood Nadia, a figure from my pasta ghost I had long buried. She was older, her confidence sharper, cloaked in an unsettling elegance that made my stomach twist. "Hello, Mia," she said, her voice smooth but edged with something I couldn't quite place. Fear coiled tightly in my stomach. The last time I had seen her, I had been barely surviving the consequences of our shared choices. "What are you doing here?" I managed to utter, my voice shaky as I half rose from the couch. "That I was in the area and thought maybe we could talk." "Private matters," she said, her gaze slipping past me to inspect the sanctuary I'd built with Eli and David. "You seem to have moved on. Or trying to," I replied, feeling Ella's presence at my side, his fingers wrapping tensely around my arm. "Good," she said simply, as if my struggle had been nothing but an idle anecdote in the grand scheme of her life. "I have information about A." The air thickened with tension. I wasn't certain whether to trust her or run. "Why now?" I asked, my pulse racing. "Because you need to understand the truth before it consumes you. Tomorrow isn't just a revelation, it could be a reckoning with more than just your past." Her words dripped with ominous weight, stirring a dread I had fought to suppress. Ella's grip on my arm tightened, and David's eyes darted between us, calculating the gravity of the situation. I felt cornered yet somehow compelled to listen. "What do you know?" Nadia stepped inside, her presence in our safe haven felt like ice water thrown over my head, unexpected and alarming. "We can't talk here. There are ears everywhere, and if you want to be ready for tomorrow, you need to hear this." Hope flickered dimly among the cacophony of fear. Could she be the key to unlocking the shadows that had haunted me for so long? Or was she simply another embodiment of the ghosts from which I had worked so hard to escape? As I stepped back into the light of the kitchen, making room for her to enter, the weight of the world pressed heavily upon me once more, a reminder that the past didn't let go so easily. Tomorrow loomed larger than ever, an unwelcome guest before an audience yet to bear witness to the truth. "Let's talk," I said, my voice barely a whisper, knowing that in that moment, I had invited vulnerability into the sanctuary I'd fought so hard to build. With that, I felt the fragile threads of my resolve unravel further, but there was no turning back now. Whatever awaited me and my past hovered just around the corner, ready to crash into my present with the force of a storm. The air hung heavy with unsaid words, the room vibrating with the tension between the past and the present. Nadia stepped over the threshold, her presence unsettling yet oddly electrifying. As the door clicked shut behind her, that small sound amplified the silence among us, a harbinger of the revelations that were about to be unveiled. That I motioned toward the small dining table, its surface still speckled with flour from our earlier baking adventure. The stark contrast of our cozy tranquility against the storm brewing inside made it all the more surreal. "Sit," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. Eli and David exchanged glances, the urgency of the situation palpable. I could see their protective instincts kicking in, but they respected my decision to engage with the woman who had emerged from the shadows. As she took a seat, her demeanor shifted from uncertainty to poise, a woman ready to deliver damning truths. "That I didn't come here to hurt you, Mia," Nadia began, her voice smooth but carrying an underlying weight of regret that matched the gravity of her words. "But if you want a chance to shift the narrative of your past, you need to know what really happened. Not just to you, but to all of us involved." That I could feel Eli's body tense beside me, a silent promise that he would interject if this got too overwhelming. Yet I had been waiting too long for answers to retreat now. "What do you mean?" I urged, a desperate need for clarity punctuating my question. "That I in the wake of that night," her voice wavered, the truth spiraled out of control. Isn't just someone you can piece together from whispers and texts. There is a network, a web of secrets. And you stumbled into it, unwillingly. Fear wrapped around me like barbed wire, tightening with each breath. But I want to break free. I'm trying to. "That's precisely why I'm here," she said, steadying her gaze with unwavering intensity. "You need allies. Tomorrow, when the truth comes out, you will be exposed not just to your classmates but to everyone linked to this nightmare. If you don't arm yourself with the right knowledge, it might destroy you." That I felt the ground beneath my feet begin to shift unsettlingly. "And you think you can help me? You, out of all people?" Nadia's expression softened, revealing a smidgen of the vulnerability I had once associated with her. "I've seen how the past can choke you. I thought I could bury it, but it only festers. I came to warn you because I regret how it all unfolded. I lost myself, and I don't want that for you. Not again." Drawing in a shaky breath, I glanced at David and Eli, whose support created a tether to my unraveling sanity. As much as part of me wanted to turn away, to slam the door on this conversation, the other part felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she was a breadcrumb leading me to resolve my fears. The moment hung in eternity as I debated trusting her. "What do you know about A?" Nadia leaned forward, her eyes glimmering with something new, determination. "Everything. The project you were working on, the secrets that were shared, the details that were manipulated. Everything. I can pinpoint where the threads begin to fray, and it starts with people you'd never assume would have had a hand in this." As she spoke, images of the past flooded back to me, moments I thought I'd buried. Each name she uttered was a label on the box of pain I had been trying to discard. My mind raced, recalling muffled conversations and furtive glances in the hallways. It was all beginning to click together, but the implications weighed heavier than any relief of clarity I sought. Before I could ask for more specifics, there was a sudden commotion outside, a chorus of shouts and the sound of breaking glass. The world outside my front door seemed to contort and shift like a living organism, pressing against my fragile sanctuary. "What was that?" David asked, his eyes wide with shock. That a piercing siren began to wail in the distance, growing louder, all-consuming. "We have to check," Eli insisted, rising to stand at the door. "Wait. Don't just go." I called out, panic edging into my voice. Yet as soon as he opened the door, a rush of chaos spilled into our calm, our carefully constructed world threatening to spiral out of control. Outside, silhouettes moved with urgency, some running, others yelling. A mob of students had gathered in a frenzy, their faces dark with confusion and fear. There was something about the pallor of their expressions, the murmurs tightening into a collective panic, that turned my stomach. What the hell is going on? I asked, almost incredulously. I could feel the wall of dread pressing closer, the reality of it all crashing into me like a rogue wave. Mia, Nadia's voice broke through my shock, urgent yet calculated. They can't find out like this. You must stay away from the crowd. If they find out your connection to, in front of everyone, the damage will be irreversible. Trust me. The urgency in her tone wormed its way into my chest, slowly wrapping around the little hope that had flickered. I looked to Eli and David, who had come back to my side, their concern mirrored in their eyes. What do we do? Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently against the table, drawing all of our attention. Tiny tremors rocketed through my fingertips as I reached for it, dread coiling tighter with each ring. I knew, without a doubt, that whatever awaited me on that screen, however it unfolded, could unravel everything I had been desperately clinging to. Reluctantly, I answered, and as I pressed it to my ear, the world shifted once again, this time, I feared, for the worse. Mia, a voice rasped, low and dark, I hope you're ready for what's coming, because the truth isn't going to wait for you to gather your strength. Time stood still, and with those words, a final realization clawed at the edges of my mind. The past was not just creeping in, it was barging through the door, ready to reclaim its place in my life. The chaos outside roared like a living beast, but all I could focus on was the voice on the other end of the line. What do you want? I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper, fear pooling in the pit of my stomach. You'll find out soon enough, the voice replied, ominous and chilling. Just remember, the ropes that bind you to your past are only as strong as the secrets you keep. And with that, the line went dead, leaving an echo of dread reverberating in my ears. That I lowered the phone, my heart racing, fraught with anxiety and questions that had been lodged deep within me. Eli grabbed my wrist, his warmth grounding me. Mia, we need to get you out of here. I shook my head, my mind spinning. No, wait. There's something. Another crash echoed from outside, louder than before, sending a shockwave of panic through the air. Shadows of angry faces shifted just outside the doorway, voices rising in urgency, blurring the chaos in my mind. I clutched the edges of the table, my knuckles white, feeling the tremor of my choices coursing through me. Nadia shot up, her demeanor shifting from tense calm to frantic fear. We have to go. A university event just evolved into a full-blown riot, and we are sitting ducks here. They might connect you to, if you don't move. Where do we go? I asked, feeling a swell of vulnerability wash over me. What if they find us? Eli stepped forward, his protective instincts flaring. There's a back door. We can slip out through the alley. Alley? My heart sank. It felt like stepping into darkness, a maze without the promise of light. What about the others? We can't just leave. But David's face was like granite, his voice steady. The others will find their way. Right now, we need to focus on your safety. Nadia nodded in agreement, steel in her resolve. Trust us, Mia. If we don't, we risk losing everything. Moments felt like hours as I weighed the gravity of their words against the thundering anxiety lurking just outside the door. I could feel curious eyes that were hungry for chaos pressing against our fragile sanctuary, wanting to tear open the seams of my reality and force the darkness into the spotlight. Okay, I said, my voice shaky. Let's go. Eli held the door, his grip firm as he turned, guiding me through as David followed closely behind, creating a protective barrier against the chaos outside. Each step felt like stepping deeper into uncertainty, legs heavy with the weight of fear, regret, and nascent hope. As we crept through the dimly lit alley, my mind raced. The last thing I needed was to be thrust back into the nightmare that had haunted me since that dreadful night. But with each shadow that loomed, each echoing voice, I felt the past rooting deeper, like vines entwining themselves around my heart, pulling me back to a place I had fought so hard to escape. Suddenly, Nadia stopped, her features illuminated by the flickering light of a street lamp. "We're going to a friend's place. He's been through this before and can help you navigate this storm." Her resolve was firm, but her eyes were clouded with something I couldn't quite grasp. "And if this storm sweeps us away?" I dared to ask. Fear knotted in my throat. "Then we fight back," David interjected, his eyes fierce, holding the promise of solidarity. "Together." Just then, the shrill sirens grew louder, closing in on us like hungry wolves. My heart raced as we hurried down the narrow alley, every sound making me jump. Suddenly Nadia halted, her breath hitching. "What's wrong?" I asked, panic creeping in again. She was staring at her phone, her face draining to a ghostly pallor. "They've posted the video." "What video?" I whispered, the sense of doom tightening around me like a vice. "The one that could expose everything." "Mia, it's all there, the conversations, the names. You're not just involved, you're at the center of it all." My breath caught in my throat, emotions swirling violently within me. I was teetering on the edge of lost hope and devastation. I felt a profound sense of betrayal, like the very ground beneath us was eroding as I stood there, helplessly watching the threads of my life unraveling before my eyes. "God, no," I choked out, the reality crashing over me like a deluge. "What do we do?" Eli grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Listen to me, Mia. This doesn't define you. Well, make them see the truth. We won't let them drown you." But just as I opened my mouth to respond, sirens screamed closer, and my heart thudded against my chest as the familiar voice echoed in my mind, reminding me of the web surrounding me, the inevitable fate closing in. The alleyway twisted ahead, and at that moment, I felt the terrifying truth unraveling into a chasm of unknowns. The world around us blurred into a haze as I realized I was standing at the precipice of this storm, and whatever lay ahead could either pull me under or, just maybe, set me free. But as I glimpsed over Ella's shoulder, a figure emerged from the shadows, and that fear coiled tighter. It was someone I never expected to see, someone lurking at the fringes of my past, and they were moving straight toward us. My heart raced, and for a moment, time found itself suspended, teetering on the brink of revelation and ruin. Everything exploded into chaos as the figure stepped further into the dim light. My stomach dropped when I recognized the familiar face tangled with memories both cherished and terrifying. Why was she here? How had she found me? "Mia," she called, her voice weaving through the cacophony around us, laced with disbelief and something else longing. It was Nora, a friend I had lost touch with during those haunting years of silence, a reminder of the life I had tried to escape. "Nora." I breathed, feelings colliding in a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The air felt electric, strung tight with the tension of what was unraveling between us. "What are you doing here?" "I heard what happened," she replied, glancing nervously back down the alley. "I was at that event, and I came to find you after everything went down." Her eyes were urgent, scanning my face as if trying to piece together a puzzle that had long been scattered. Eli and David remained tense beside me, sensing the significance of this unexpected reunion, their bodies radiating protectiveness. "You shouldn't be here," Eli warned, tightening his grip. "Things are dangerous. Look, I don't want to get involved in whatever mess this is, but you need to know what's at stake, Mia," Nora replied, her voice steadying like a ship amidst the storm. "You're in the middle of something much larger than you realize. And it's not just about A. There are others who want to keep the truth from coming out. They'll do anything to protect their secrets." That I felt the world tilt sideways, the gravity of her words sinking into me. "Why didn't you say anything before?" I managed, pleading for answers amidst the chaos swirling around me. "That I tried," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. "But you cut everyone off. I didn't think you'd listen. But now we're all facing the consequences, and if you don't act, you'll drown before you can even swim." David stepped forward, his intensity palpable. "What do you mean? You know more about this about A. What happens next? They all want to control the narrative," Nora explained, her eyes darting as if fearing the shadows themselves might retaliate. What they don't realize is that the truth has a way of coming out, even when buried under fear and silence. You need to confront them before it's too late. It's not just about you, it's about everyone, Nadia cut in, her voice stern, and you trust her. She's part of the web that's ensnared Mia. Nora's expression softened, outrage sparking in her eyes. I was part of her past, yes, but I've been trying to protect her, not hurt her. I'm asking you both to stop doubting me. We're all at risk here. With the cacophony of sirens blaring outside, I felt time slipping through my fingers like sand falling from my grasp. Tell me how, I urged, desperation crackling in the air. How can I fight back? Meet me at the coffee shop tomorrow morning, Nora suggested, the determination flooding back into her features. I can help, but you must trust me. I want to be there for you, Mia, just like I should have been long ago. You need the allies who know how to navigate this mess. Can you guarantee our safety? Ella's voice stirred with authority. Nora nodded, a flicker of hope igniting at the edges of her expression. Yes, I promise. Just trust me. Silence hung thick in the air as I weighed my options, the tension around us twisted like a coiled spring, ready to snap. I don't know if I can trust you again, I finally admitted, my heart wrestling with revelations. A wave of emotion surged through me, intertwined with the remnants of fear and confusion. Trust is rebuilt with time and action, Nora replied, her honesty cutting through the mist of uncertainty. All I ask is for a chance to show you I've changed. I promise, Mia, this time I won't let you down. The sincerity in her gaze pierced through my defenses, beckoning me to take a step forward into the unknown. All right, I heard myself say, my voice hardly above a whisper. I will meet you, but I will not hesitate to walk away if I sense betrayal. Fair enough, she said, relief washing over her features. I'll make sure everything is in order. But you must. Prepare yourself, what's waiting for you isn't easy. Are you ready for that? The uncertainty coursing through me rippled as I nodded, swallowing the knot tightening in my throat. This journey had been fraught with shadows, but perhaps a glimmer of light awaited at the end of it. Now we need to move, Eli said, urgency edging his voice. Let's get you to safety. As we turned to leave, I cast one last glance at Nora, who stood amidst the chaotic shadows, and in the quiet that surrounded us, I felt a glimmer ignite deep within my heart, a fragile flicker of hope. The five of us slipped through the alley as sirens continued to wail in the distance, shadows looming around us, but together, we created a space filled with whispers of solidarity. In that moment, the past no longer threatened to consume me, perhaps it was time to reclaim the narrative, one careful step at a time. Tomorrow dawned heavy with implications, fraught with both fear and anticipation, but I wouldn't face it alone. A sliver of bravery took root within me, ready to blossom with the care of those who stood beside me against the storm. And as we navigated the darkness of the alley, hand in hand, I realized that no matter how great the shadows loomed, together, we carried the light within us, and it would not be extinguished again. No more silence. No more avoiding the truth. No more hiding. I was ready to fight.